Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss The Passion of the Christ, starring Jim Caviezel, Monica Bellucci, Maya Morgenstern, Crystal Jivkov, and Francesco DeVito, directed by Mel Gibson. And can I just say now, welcome to either my famous or infamous episode of this show with The Passion of the Christ. And I'm going to just confess now, I'm not a Christian nor Jewish man, but I do both either way. I don't have any strong feelings either way. And I didn't see this movie in theaters because I was 14 at the time, and I didn't find anybody that wanted to go with me to see this movie. As I waited till it came out on home viewing on DVD or something like that, and I remember being, maybe not. That's what this show is for. Let's get into it. In 700 BC, Jesus of Nazareth, played by Jim Caviezel, is wounded as Judas betrays him to be paid by the king of Jerusalem, while Jesus is praying and Satan, who is actually played by a woman in this movie, torments him. I don't know the woman's name, so forgive me. That God will not help him and tries to pull out a snake to poison Jesus, but he doesn't get poisoned as the guards of Jerusalem come for Jesus and capture him and torture him for days. As this is the movie about how he got killed, not so much about how he got taught, how he taught mankind to pray. As there was another movie called Son of God about how Jesus taught mankind to pray to God and He will listen. But to be brutally honest, I don't like any of the characters in this because this movie tells the audience of how Jesus got killed by Jerusalem, I guess. I don't know the full details of what happened in the story, but it's basically he got killed by the Jewish community. I don't want to be rude or anything like that, which sends out the wrong message in general. And this movie does send out the wrong message in general. I'm not going to lie to you. And the guards of Jerusalem capture Jesus after Judas betrays him with the kiss. And the other guards go after they let Jesus' followers, like Peter, John, and I think a few others, go. And Jesus' mother, Mary, played by Maya Morgenstern, dreams of Jesus' capture. And some woman, Magdalene, played by Monica Bellucci, comforts her as John comes in and says her son has been captured, while the guards continually beat Jesus while taking him to Jerusalem with Judas. And there were times the shot with the cinematography were absolutely haunting, and this movie should have the spirit of how Jesus taught people to pray to God, but no, this movie is basically of torturing the poor guy for 2 hours. And there was an episode of South Park called The Passion of the Jew. Don't judge me. That's the title of that episode, about how Stan and Kenny don't like the movie, while Kyle gets tormented by it, and Cartman's a fan of Mel Gibson after that. And Stan and Kenny want their money back, despite they sat through the whole movie to go to director Mel Gibson's house in Malibu to grab their $18 back. And it turns out Mel Gibson's a psycho because 2 tickets were about that price in 2004, were that price at that price, and they show Mel Gibson's a psycho. But if I sat through this in theaters, which I didn't, I wouldn't go around saying I want my money back after sitting through the whole fucking movie. And the point is, make a movie about how much he taught instead of how he got killed, which was what Son of God did, but I didn't like that film either. Which sends out the wrong message, this movie does, and the people see Jesus as a menace and believes he's the devil, and these stereotypes of Jewish people are probably a bad choice on director Mel Gibson's part, as he tries to explain how they're the devil, which doesn't make any sense because, come on, they're like anybody else, a human being. As a priest believes this is a travesty, someone up who's to beat someone up who's trying to teach people in the middle of the fucking night, and Jerusalem calls for a verdict of the death of Jesus and start beating the shit out of the poor guy. And someone grabs Peter like they recognize him, and Peter says he doesn't know Jesus. And this movie made a lot of money for reasons I don't quite fully understand. So far, this is pretty disrespectful to not only the Jewish people, but to anybody that chooses to believe what he taught instead of how he got killed. Peter bumps into John, Mary, and Magdalene while Judas wants to give back the money of Jerusalem. While Peter bumps into a couple of kids as he calls them Satans, as one of them is grabbed by him, while the other bites him, and we see haunting images of the kids looking like the sons of the devil, while Mary looks for the top where Jesus is chained, and morning comes, and Peter is still being chased by the sons of the devils, and spits on them and taunts him, while he sees Satan and a dead goat and decides to hang himself as the guard talks to the priest about how Jesus' greatest crime is, which is what they believe he taught was the wrong thing, which doesn't make me believe in the story, as it's very weakly told by director Mel Gibson. The guards ask Jesus if he's king of the Jews, and he doesn't know how to answer that question, and says he's willing to die for his followers as his truth. And the guards ask him what is truth, and they take him to a fool, and they junk around as they choose the fool over Jesus. And if you ask me, Mel Gibson doesn't make the right choices in this movie, in my opinion. And I feel like this is not the right movie to see about this story as Son of God, as the Son of God, as the guards need reinforcements against Jesus, as they have no cause to keep him alive. And the priest speaks to the people, and they choose to release a prisoner, Barabbas? Yeah, that's the fool I was talking about at one point, that has more crimes in him than Jesus ever did. And come on, how is this the right thing to do, as this movie tells how Jesus was killed in the most bullshit way possible? And I choose my own beliefs, as this movie tells the audience the Jews are the devil, and I can't go with that because, come on, we're all human beings. The guards begin torturing Jesus with sticks and whips while Satan watches, and the score in this was awful from start to finish. While Magdalene and Mary watches, and 55 minutes into the movie, I start to realize I'm not a big Christian movie guy, and nor in general, nor am I a big fan of Jim Caviezel, because after this movie, he stuck with this route, and I've seen a couple of Christian movies in my life, but it's not my favorite genre. And I eventually, well, actually, like Jim Caviezel came out with a movie about last year or 2 years ago called Sound of Freedom, which I never saw. And there's a reason I never was a big fan of those kind of movies, as I didn't even know what the hell that thing was. And eventually Mary walks away, and she can't bear watching her son getting tortured for the longest time. And despite I don't like this movie in general, it's not the worst I've seen in general. Like the worst movie. Let me just rephrase that part. We see Satan with a devilish looking child looking at Jesus getting tortured and smiles about it. And we get very little scenes of flashbacks where Jesus is teaching some people, and a guard comes on and says enough. They come to punish the man, not kill him to death. And this movie is too much for me, while Mel Gibson goes too far with the bloody violence throughout, as the guards give Jesus a crown that he will be known in the Bible for, while the guards continually beat him up and torture Jesus. And this torturing business is going on for too long that hell, sometimes I can't even handle it, as I can handle movie violence, but not so much how this movie tells people to do so, which is ridiculous to me, because as this movie is about torture, and while the guards laugh at him, while the people tell the guards to crucify him, while they say he's had enough. And I know the story, but personally, can we just get to the fucking point? Because it doesn't have to be 2 hours long, as that was annoying to me. The townspeople bringing a cross and kill Jesus by crucifixion, as they throw rocks at the poor guy, and Mary tries to go to Jesus while Satan watches as Jesus drops the crucifix, and he picks it back up, and John brings Mary in closer to Jesus as he falls down to drops himself in the crucifix again, and she thinks of when he was a boy and how he fell down, and she goes up to Jesus, and he says he'll change things after his death. And I'm not checked out, I'm just done with it. Like, get to the point, Mel. People continually watch Jesus drop himself with the crucifix while the guards keep torturing him, and a guard forces a man to reluctantly help Jesus and carry the crucifix as well as his body. Well, it's none of his fucking business, and a woman comes in to help Jesus up, and she asks him to permit him, my Lord, and almost gives him water until a guard kicks it away from her. And the guy helping Jesus tells everybody else to leave him alone. And the damn guards are laughing, which is stupid enough as it is, while the townspeople were attacking him, which is dumb enough, and as they were. And why does Mel Gibson make stereotypes out of Jews? I wonder. Like, who does he think he is? Like, what more does he want to explain him, as this movie is dragging by that much? They get closer to where he was crucified, and we get a flashback of Jesus teaching people. And I wanted more scenes about that than how he got killed. And he gets there as Jesus falls down, and once more, and the guards demand him to get up, as does the townspeople, as Mary Magdalene and John witness the torture of poor Jesus. As we get a brief flashback of how he tells his people they're his friends while tying Jesus up, as well as putting nails on Jesus' hand and raises the crucifix while looking up, which is a creepy shot from the get-go, as some of the shots were haunting. And I'll give credit to Mel Gibson for that. And Jesus suffers his last breath. People watch him die, while the man who helped him with the cross feels pain for Jesus. And the priest says, if he's the Messiah, prove it, as Jesus is praying for the townspeople, as well as another man who is hanging on the cross with Jesus. And a crow pokes at him, the other man, and the winds blow at nighttime, and Jesus' prayers might come through. And I hope it works, because this movie it does work in real life, but this movie hasn't worked for me. Mary cries for the loss of her son as he dies and the earth shakes. And people become afraid, and the guards run as Jerusalem breaks apart, and the guards are in disbelief after Jesus died. Even Satan can't handle it, and the guards bring down Jesus, and Mary kissed him goodbye while all bloodied up, and the guards come in, put him in the cave with a rock, and put Jesus' body in, unfortunately not rot until the third day of his crucifixion, which happens to be on Easter Sunday. And the climax took too long, as it dragged. And does the movie do justice to the story of Jesus of Nazareth? Let's find out in a rating, shall we? I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. I don't like the characters, and this movie sends the wrong message to its audiences, as this is a 2-hour movie about how Jesus was killed, compared to another movie, Son of God, which is about how he teaches people to pray to God and he will listen, which is a mistake on director Mel Gibson's part. While there were times the shots were haunting, and I'll credit Mel Gibson for that, but he's giving the audience the wrong idea, as he starts with how Jesus is being tortured instead of what he taught. And in my opinion, that is not the right thing to do as far as making a movie like that goes. This movie does all the wrong things in the most bullshit way possible, as the score was awful from start to finish. And after 55 minutes into the movie, not only am I not a big Jim Caviezel fan, which I'm not, Christian movies are not my favorite genre. And I've seen a few in my life, but they just don't interest me, as this movie isn't interesting for me either. Despite I didn't like the movie, it's not the worst I've seen in general, the worst movie in general. But unfortunately, it's the pits of the directorial debut of Mel Gibson, and it was a chore to get through. And I can handle movie violence, but the way Mel Gibson does this is, especially in a biblical movie, is a little too much. And it goes on for too long, and this is a non-recommendation for this movie, as it gives the audience the wrong message, and the fact that it's telling it for 2 hours straight, I thought, get to the fucking point. And that was annoying to me, as this movie is coming up with a sequel called The Resurrection of the Christ, which is something I'm not looking forward to after this movie. So I would like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be back next time with Apocalypto. And until then, Jesus, I'm sorry that I was talking negative about this movie. This movie was terrible, but may you rest in peace. Bye-bye.